Our election coverage continues with perspective from two of our all-Indiana politics analysts, Democrat Ariel Brandy and Republican Whitley Yates, left and right on your screen and ideologically respectively. Thank you both for being with us early this morning after a long night. Ariel, let's start with you. Generally speaking, no real upsets in Indiana. What do we learn from that?
Yeah, I think right now we learn in the state of Indiana that unfortunately you can run and you can break the law and you can also, unfortunately, sexually assault women, and you can still end up being our Secretary of State, an election denier. And I think right now for Hoosier voters, especially ones that wanted to put their trust in someone that would be able to prevail and represent them, I don't think that that happened when you look at our statewide candidates across the state. Unfortunately, extremist policies and having that reflected in someone who's supposed to be leading us with integrity in elections is something that I think, unfortunately, I was very disheartened to see.
No pulling of punches this morning after. Whitley, your response to that and your overall takeaways from the lack of surprises?
You know, I think Ms. Brandy should be very careful hurling insults. People are not guilty when accused, and that's the truth. Yesterday, we made history in Indiana. We have the first Latino Secretary of State ever in history, and I would think that the Democratic Party that champions diversity would be a champion of that cause. Republicans won up and down the ballot all day yesterday, and what we saw was honestly that Hoosiers need leaders. And when the Democratic Party is peddling pronouns and abortion as the only solution for Hoosiers, it's just not winning topics.
Whitley, straight back to you with this one, then Ariel, you follow that. Neither the Secretary of State's race and, for instance, the District 1 race up north were particularly close. A lot of people presumed that they would be extremely close. Are you surprised at that?
I'm going to be honest.
I think that...
Whitley, let's start with you.
Okay. I thought the Congressional District 1 race was close. It's a 90-year Democratic seat, and to lose by 12,000 votes is historic for us. So that is actually really exciting. And it honestly just shows that whatever's been happening in the Democratic Party, not just in Indiana, but around the country, isn't a win. I was not surprised to see Diego come out on top. I was not surprised to see him win. I didn't think that what Ms. Wells was selling and peddling to Hoosiers was going to be impactful. Diego made decade-long contributions to this state and has worked with Hoosiers consistently. So I was expecting to see that reflected, and that's what happened.
Ariel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I cannot hear Whitley, but I can hear you.
Okay, well, so your thoughts on the margin in some of the highest profile races. A lot of people presumed that District 1 would be extraordinarily close. The Secretary of State's office didn't particularly turn out to be close. Your take on that sort of lack of a narrow margin?
Yeah, I think when we look at specifically CD1, I mean, everyone had concerns about Frank Mrvan and Republicans being able to come into a strong Democratic territory and to be able to take over and to have that lead. And I think the voters prevailed in the end of that. I mean, we have someone who has served us in Congress and has delivered for Hoosiers. And I think that people, when they got to the ballot, they remembered that. And that is something that we have to think about. I don't think that we were as close as most people thought at a Republican takeover or that red wave that they thought were going to come through up in CD1. So I am very happy to see the successes that we had there. At the end of the day, we know that it comes to turnout, and voters in the 1st Congressional District, they did just that.
It is still clear this morning that it's not clear where congressional control will lie, whether the House will flip, if we might see 50-50 again in the Senate. Ariel, you first. What do you predict happens in the next 2 years, or does that depend on what happens in the next 2 hours or so?
I think it does. It depends on what happens in the next 2 hours. And also, too, it looks like we're going to be going into a runoff. So December will be the time in which hopefully we will know as Americans where our Congress stands. But I mean, I think it's still a little bit too early to be able to project the next 2 years. Let's hang on tight for the next month or so and see what ends up happening.
Whitley, is that an area you might agree on, that there's still much to be learned here in the next hours and days ahead?
Yes, I would agree. But one thing is for certain and for sure, there weren't a lot of changes. So this election really kind of was a nothing burger. So we don't see a lot of changes either way on the Republican side or the Democratic side. And so one begs the question is, what is it that Americans are looking for that they didn't receive in this cycle? And will they receive it in the next? And that's something that both parties should be focused on consistently.
Ariel Brandy and Whitley Yates both on top of their game even after a long election night. We'll be looking for more perspective from them with all Indiana politics in the days and weeks ahead. Thanks to both of you.